What's up, everybody? Today on the channel we're going to be driving this 2023 Hyundai Santa Fe. Before we begin, I just wanted to shout out my own Instagram. If you guys want to follow me and you're on Instagram, definitely do that here. I post a lot of the like photos and videos of cars I'm driving before they go to YouTube, so it's a good way to see what is up next. Anyways, today we're in an SEL trim of the Hyundai Santa Fe. This one starts at $32,000. A little bit about this thing: it has an 8-speed automatic, a 2.5-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder that makes 191 horsepower, 181 pound-feet of torque. Anyways, before we get out on the road, let's go check out the exterior of the car and these back seats as well as the trunk. So as you can see, we have the daytime running lights on right now, and honestly they're very good looking. I think the front end of this thing is still kind of weird for me because like these are the daytimes and then you have the headlights that come down here. It's just kind of odd that Hyundai did it this way, but you know, they do it with the Kona too, so I guess at least they're following the same design language throughout their models. We have some decent 5-spoke wheels here. They're a little funky, but again, following the same design language as my Elantra N-Line, which had those, you know, kind of fan blade type of wheels. And then in the back here, of course, we have our brake lights, single exhaust with, you know, a fake little cap there to show that it's a lot bigger than it actually is. I do actually like the rear end of this car. I feel like it's very simplistic, easy design to it. It's, you know, not much on the eyes, and not polarizing in terms of like, oh, people look at it and they're like, oh, that's bad looking. So all right, so in the trunk we have tons and tons of room, and that's really just because we don't have a third row in this Santa Fe. Of course, down here we have some extra storage. I will say on the highway, this piece, even though it was secured down, was giving me a lot of vibration on my trip yesterday. So I don't know really why that is, but I did check to make sure it was down. All right, so sitting behind myself, I am 5'9". I have plenty of room in this second row. I feel like if you're a family of 5, the only compromising spot is like if you have 3 older kids, there's no way 3 older kids are gonna sit in this third row. It's kind of squeezed together in that sense, but family of 4, you're living large here. You know, you have tons of room for you and, you know, your back passengers. They'll have HVAC back here, no controls though, and then 2 USB ports on the bottom there. Door cards have speakers, no sunroof in here, which I would have liked, but I'm guessing you got to get you know, you got to spend more money to get that. And so before we get out on the road, a few things to note as far as infotainment goes. We have wired Apple CarPlay, which I've always been a fan of wireless because you can just leave your phone in your pocket, get in and go. However, this one is really good. It's incredibly smooth. There's no lag. I had no connectivity issues all of yesterday. It was really just impressive, honestly. We also have built-in navigation here, lots of physical buttons, including a weird shifter that kind of reminds me of the Honda one that's currently in a lot of their cars, such as the Odyssey and the Ridgeline. We have heated seats down here, and the only thing I don't like about the HVAC controls is you can't see what temperature you're at until you actually press the button. So, I mean, it's kind of a nuanced thing, but I always like to have a little display that shows my current temperature settings. So, point against there. Before we go, let's check out this backup camera. So, pretty standard. Don't have, you know, much options for view. You basically get 2. You can kind of have like a bird's eye one of the rear only, and then you, of course, have the standard setting. I wish they kind of had a 360 view. I love the one in my Mach-E. I feel like it's great for parking in tight spaces. You know, a lot of people nowadays, I mean, I shouldn't say nowadays, it's probably always been a problem, but there's just a lot of people who can't park, and those sensors and cameras really help them. All right, let's put it back in drive and get out on the road. So for competitors of this Santa Fe, you really have to look at what's on the market. So of course we have the Toyota Highlander, which is, you know, same price, about same size. We have the Honda Pilot, which I've driven, you know, a 2023 as well, and honestly I can say that right up front these two cars feel very similar in a lot of ways, which we'll get to. And then you have Kia's, obviously, Sorento. So, you know, you basically have a slew of options for this price range, especially because a lot of these, you know, auto manufacturers are making tons and tons of different variations and sizes of SUVs. That's really just what the market demands right now, and that's what they're providing. The Santa Fe just really feels underpowered with the base engine. I feel like it's just a lot of weight and size to move around, and I feel like the upgraded engine is definitely worth checking out if you have the money to swing for it. I know the SEL is still plenty of car here, like we have lots of features, but of course, you know, you're gonna really feel it, especially when getting on the highway and merging. Like, I shouldn't really need to be above 4,000 RPMs to move this thing. You know, you'd want more of a torquey engine that you can get some decent power and low RPMs and kind of, you know, move the family around in silence. This 8-speed automatic is still pretty good. It shifts smoothly unless it's under a, you know, load from the engine. I think it gets a little confused as to what you want. Like if you, like with the amount of throttle you're inputting, it'll sometimes like downshift once, wait a second, and then downshift again, because it's like, oh, like we need to do that again. And I think that's just where it feels a little lackluster compared to some competitors such as the Honda Pilot. And I know Hyundai doesn't always have the best transmissions as much as of late. Like my 2021 Elantra N-Line with that dual clutch, I wouldn't call it unrefined, but just over the course of, you know, 50,000 miles plus is really when it started to give me a lot of problems. It started, you know, shifting weird, sometimes like slipping through gears. Like it was a little rough, and, you know, maybe that's what some other, you know, test reviewers were complaining about in that terms. But I don't also think that they, you know, we're talking about a long-term review. I think they were just talking out of the box, which causes some concern. I think if you are in the market for one of these Santa Fe's, definitely test drive the base engine and of course the, you know, the upgraded 2.5 liter turbocharged one. Just kind of see what they're both like before you make a purchasing decision. So this interior for the most part is quite comfortable. These seats are of course cloth, and they have power adjustments and heat to them, and they're quite comfortable on long road trips. Like I had no problem doing 4 straight hours in this car each way yesterday. But I will say that I wish I had a little more legroom. This infotainment stack here takes up a ton of space in the cabin, really kind of restricts the amount of room you have here. And I think, you know, that's due to them having to push back the firewall a little bit. And then, you know, they're like, why not just put a huge infotainment stack and all of our buttons here? Whereas when you get an electric car nowadays, like all this is erased, and you basically could like walk from this side to your passenger. Like you just have a lot more room for your legs. And, you know, I rented the Santa Fe yesterday because I wanted more room. Like I was originally going to just do like a Kona or something for my road trip for work yesterday, but I decided against that to, you know, have a little bit more space in this thing, and I think I got played for a fool. The Santa Fe just doesn't provide the amount of legroom someone, you know, 5'9" or above would need. I feel like if you're, you know, someone who's over 6 foot, you're actually going to have a hard time fitting in these front seats just due to the leg space. I will say I do like most of the, you know, design choices in here as far as looks. I feel like things, you know, appear to be very high quality. I like the door cards, what they did with the speaker design. I thought that was pretty cool. And I also enjoy the little shelf that is on the dashboard. I think, you know, the Toyota Highlander did that first, but other manufacturers are following suit because it's like, why not put some extra bit of space in this cabin? You know, and we also have a large center console, which you could fit like a couple 16-ounce Yetis in there, no problem. And, you know, I think that in a lot of ways they made some good design choices, and in some ways they made some poor ones. Another poor design choice for me is the material on this steering wheel. I think it's supposed to be like a leather wrap, but it just feels really cheap. You know, it does have good ergonomics, and the steering wheel itself has lots of good buttons, such as, you know, your volume control, skip track, you have your cruise control, and the ability to hang up calls. And then for mode, you can basically control, you know, like if you're running Bluetooth or Sirius XM or, you know, CarPlay, whatever. And then the last thing you have is inside the digital gauge cluster, you have like a little screen, which you can control all those settings from this little button here. So pretty thoughtful in that sense, but I just still don't like how the steering wheel feels in the hands. There are, however, two storage issues in here. So one, there's just no place to put your phone, and with a wired connection for Apple CarPlay, you have to have it in the vicinity. You know, you're kind of restricted to how long your cable is. So unless you get an incredibly long cable so you can, you know, run it to the other door card or to this little shelf here, you're just gonna have a hard time finding out where to place your phone, right? Because you only have two cup holders here, and there's this kind of little storage compartment here, but your phone will fall into your lap pretty easily. And I think that, you know, they kind of made a poor design choice by not having a place to put your phone. You'll definitely have to buy one of those little mounts to stick somewhere, and even that will be a bit of a challenge. So for me, I personally have been putting my phone on the passenger seat because I had no one with me yesterday, and that was a solution for then. But if you have anyone else in the car with you, of course you won't be able to do that. The other storage issue in here is, of course, we have no place to put sunglasses. And, you know, in a car, you always carry sunglasses with you, even if you don't necessarily use them on a daily basis. And I actually had that same thing in my Elantra. They just didn't come with a storage compartment for that, so kind of weird. I guess you could put them in this large console here, but then again, you know, you risk them being buried or damaged with the rest of your stuff in there, so just keep that in mind. The ride quality in here is pretty good. This thing rides really smooth on the highway, and not a ton of road noise either. I'd say the noisiest part is like the wind you get up here. Maybe just like the seal isn't as good on the windows or something, or they're extra thin. I will say if you have just the front driver's window down, you'll actually get a ton of wind buffeting, so keep that in mind. You kind of have to crack one of your other windows. And I don't have that problem in a lot of cars I test drive. So, you know, if you have that in your car and you're like, oh, that's every car's problem, that's not true. So we have 4 available drive modes in this Santa Fe. We have Smart, which basically just dictates your driving mode based on your driving habits. And this is actually the only way to get into like an eco mode in Hyundais, which is kind of bizarre. And then Comfort is your normal mode. They always call it Comfort nowadays in so many cars. And then of course we have Sport, which I don't even see why you would use it in this car, but it is there. And then Snow mode. One thing they also added to this car was the paddle shifters on the wheel. The paddle shifters themselves are high quality, but honestly the paddle shifters, when you shift up and down with them, you don't feel as connected to the engine and as you would in like a dual clutch. I just feel like the reactions are a little bit delayed, so I wouldn't even bother using them in most cases. I would just kind of let the Santa Fe do the work for you. They are also wheel mounted, which I always have a problem with, because if you're doing hand over hand turns, which some commenters on YouTube will tell you that you never go hand over hand, so I guess maybe they don't drive, or I don't know. But if you go hand over hand, you kind of have to find and seek out your paddle, or wait till you turn back the wheel to, you know, to its original position, which can be kind of problematic if you're driving really fast. So let's take a moment to talk about the steering. Overall, it feels just like any other SUV. It's not problematic in any way. You get a light connection to the road in terms of where your tires are, and it doesn't really change much between drive modes either. So, you know, don't expect to throw it into sport and that steering really tighten up, because that doesn't happen much in this car. But yeah, I mean, overall it's just very light SUV steering, very comparable to that of the Honda Pilot that I have driven. I don't have a review of that car up on the channel, but it's part of our family here, and so, you know, I've spent a lot of time in that comparable model. As far as fuel economy, it's rated for 25 city, 28 highway. Real world, yesterday I averaged about 26 on my drive to New York and back, so I was doing a lot of highway miles, and so it definitely depends on your pace, of course, but you know, I think 26 for an SUV of this size is really good. So as far as features in this $32,000 SUV, you do have quite a bit of safety stuff, such as blind spot monitoring, lane follow assist, adaptive cruise control, which are both on the steering wheel. We, of course, have keyless entry and remote start, which is right on our key fob. Also a push button start, which is becoming, you know, basically a standard in all new cars, so I almost feel like not talking about that anymore. We also have built-in navigation, of course, wired CarPlay, which I talked about before. The heated seats in here. The one thing I do wish this car had was a sunroof. I feel like it would add quite a bit to the cabin. But overall, as far as everything else goes, of course, you know, ABS, emergency braking, there's even beeping for when you change lanes, and that blind spot monitoring detects somebody there. It'll alert you, which I think is a very helpful feature. Even though, you know, when you put on your directional, you're not instantly gonna turn without looking. It is good to have, just in case, you know, you're trying to quickly change lanes. It'll beep at you to tell you that someone's there, and if it doesn't beep, most cases there isn't somebody there. My one last critique with the Santa Fe is I wish it had better parking sensors and cameras. I think that a lot of people have difficulties parking larger SUVs, and putting those cameras and sensors in just means that less people get, you know, hit in the parking lot, have their cars hit. So I think just that is, you know, obviously compromising for poor driving, but I mean, what can you do? We're not gonna, you know, clearly they're not being trained in driver's ed, which, you know, is a larger problem in this country, but there's nothing that an auto manufacturer can do other than compromise with more cameras and more sensors. So with that being said, I did enjoy my time in this Hyundai Santa Fe. I do think for over $32,000 original MSRP feels like a lot of money for what you get. I think the Honda Pilot and the Toyota Highlander are more refined and better products. You won't get the 100,000 mile warranty which came with the Santa Fe brand new, but I feel like the Highlander and the Pilot, they really don't need it, right? Those cars will drive tons and tons of miles with no problems whatsoever. My dad owns a Highlander. My girlfriend's family owns a Pilot, so I see those cars a lot, and both of them have quite a bit of miles on them, especially the Highlander, which, you know, I think my dad's is at like 180,000, and he's got a 2017. So anyways, to wrap up my thoughts, this Santa Fe is a pretty decent competitor to the rest of the mid-size SUVs on the market, especially for the larger two rows. I will, however, personally choose the Toyota Highlander as my champion. I think that thing has just had a long track record of being quite reliable and a better driving car too. I think the steering is so much better in those. But with that being said, please leave your comments, your questions below. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you all next time on Auto Joe. Thank you.